Hello, everybody, and welcome to the One Fear Per Year podcast. I am joined by someone who I am so excited to pick his brain and talk about certain things. Albert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Janice, for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here.
So, something that was so intriguing to me about you is the fact that you talk about psychology and hypnosis as it relates to moving through fear. So I wanted to start off there and have you do a little bit of a deeper dive into that and explain to us how psychology and hypnosis have to do with walking through fear.
Well, I'm glad you asked. And it really starts from a fundamental perspective that fear is programmed into it. And it's a lot of times it can be just one quick experience. Let's say it's a small child, you're going over your neighbor's house or your friend's house, and they have a large dog. The dog will attack you, jump on you, even just bark because excitement and startles you and scares you. Now, because of that was such a significant experience, that anytime you experience the sight of another dog, the presence of another dog, that fear comes back, that those memories come flooding back. Maybe not even consciously, but just subconsciously, you develop like that fear response. Consequently, people who, even in a car accident, get into a car accident, and sometimes they get fearful of getting back into a car again because of that one experience was encoded. So, unfortunately, a lot of times fears can be programmed into us very easily and very instantly, like just like that. It's just done. Um, Now, where hypnosis comes in is kind of like recoding that, going back and reframing and retransferring that experience. So it's not that we're totally downplaying it, but it's like that was just one experience, and not all dogs are scary. Not not every car ride is going to be scary. So it's sort of like goes back and neutralizes that emotional impact. We don't change what happened. We can't erase the past or change the past. What we can do is change the tone or the way that you react to it, make it a more neutral experience. So when you're describing that traumatic event, instead of getting emotionally worked up to it, what you're doing is you're describing almost like what you ate for dinner last night. It's very neutral.
I can so relate to this. This is why I was excited to talk to you. Is one of my big breakthroughs was during a hypnotherapy session
Mm-hmm.
where she actually guided me down kind of deeper into my subconscious, and I was able to see and feel the complete fear because I was supposed to go into my safe place inside, and when I opened the door to my safe place, it was pitch black and I felt terror. So, which told me that there was no real safe place inside of me to go. It was full of fear. And she
Mm-hmm.
helped me to take the fear, put it into this clear bubble, and I watched it float away in my imagination, in my mind's eye.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, but then there was this clear space for me to create something new. So I am a very strong proponent of hypnosis, hypnotherapy, those kind of things. What was your experience? How did you come across the hypnosis and how did you become to either do it or become aware of it?
Well, a couple of things. I mean, yeah, my initial training was clinical psychology, and that was like my goal when I was in college, and even in grad school, I was like, I want to be a clinical psychologist. But and I have a deep respect for the field, and I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I'm a clinical psychologist by training. I have all the training, in grad school, master's and doctorate. So one thing that really drew me to it was the fact that it's solution focused. It's much different than talk therapy. Yeah, and that while talk therapy does have its value and a lot of great value to it, it sometimes doesn't move necessarily the needle as fast as what and other approaches have been. So I've been very much more of a solution focused type of counseling. And when I was going for a master's degree, I specialized in marriage and family therapy. And the one thing that was kind of brought up was, solution focused approaches like Milton Erickson and Jay Haley and Chloe Madanis, or Virginia Satir, which all are actually, pioneers in hypnotherapy. Maybe not necessarily hypnotherapists themselves. Some of them weren't, but the processes were born out of their work. So that was got me that. Plus, as with most people who go into hypnosis and hypnotherapy, it was because we experienced it. So when I was, I'd say, my early 20s, I did something that, I like to try out new things. So one night there was a comedy show in my area at a state hypnotist, and I was curious. So I walked on the stage with a very open mind. And of course I went, into trance very easily and kind of had fun throughout the entire show. But couple things that stood out for me. Number one, I was completely aware of what was going on, even though, like the people on stage, when people are looking at a stage hypnosis show, it looks like there are people that go out of it. Newsflash, we're not, out of it. We're completely aware of what's going on. So that was the one thing that surprised me, but also just the comfort level of going up there and, there was no stage fright whatsoever. Gone. And that, to me, when I walked out of there, I was like on cloud 9, afterward. Because the one thing about a good trance is when you come out of it, the amount of endorphin rush is nothing like I've experience. And so I was like, I really got to do this again. And what was that? Well, that was a lot of fun. And that's where, it took me 4 years later before I started going back into studying this in a professional and clinical sense. And it's just very, being a very solution focused and being a very much, I was always a creative, right-brained type of person growing up. That means I have very vivid imagination. And I often would daydream very often growing up. So, and even to this day. So that kind of makes me a little bit more, I would say, hyper on the suggestibility scale, you would say. And so that's what got me really interested in hypnosis and hypnotherapy, those kind of features together. And just learning more about it is so powerful because one thing that I think it's a very misunderstood thing. I think probably the most people think it's mind control. People think it's, taboo. And it's not, if you think about it, everybody is hypnotizable. We're suggestible. We can learn. If you weren't suggestible, you wouldn't learn. Wouldn't be able to learn. And a lot of people, because I get this conversation a lot. I don't think I'd be hypnotized. I'm like, that I disagree with vehemently, strongly. Now, you have to be open and willing to, be wanting the process to happen for it to.
Right.
But we're hypnotized daily by the media, by politics, by salespeople, even our partners inadvertently hypnotize us. In a relationship, you come home and your partner says to you, "Gee, honey, you look tired." Now all of a sudden, you start feeling like, you know what? Maybe I am, and maybe I'll even yawn after that. Now, it was just because of that suggestion that brought back that thing of I'm tired right now. Or even as a little kid, like you ever kid scrapes his knees, he starts crying. Mommy kisses the knee, makes it better. And all of a sudden, the kid could go out and play again. Or he could be playing with his friends. He falls down, but he doesn't hurt him because he's with his friends right now. But now all of a sudden, when he or she sees the mom or their dad, they start crying in pain.
That's a really good example. I like that a lot. And for me, it was you know how they call this the monkey mind, or just where your thoughts, if you ruminate a lot and you have a lot of thoughts that spin around. For me, when I would do hypnotherapy, it would quiet just all of that mind chatter, and it would allow me to really go deeper within. Has that been your experience as well?
Yes, yeah, it's excellent at quieting the mind, and that's why we're open to whatever it is the message you receive, because our mind is quiet. Like a lot of times, again, why and this is why I like late at night. Why are there more infomercials on TV? Because we're more relaxed and more suggestible into buying products and to getting, we're not in that chatter of the day-to-day thing. So, but yeah, it's certainly that, and it's just and just the power of imagination, really, because the one thing about their mind is the brain does not know the difference between imagination and reality. So if you imagine something over and over again, your brain perceives it as real. And they've done clinical studies on visualization like that. If you visualize something, which is what we do in hypnosis therapy, and it could be anything, like in your case about, that balloon, that safe space of going to the balloon and having that trauma go away, through that balloon, that metaphor. So again, if you really are, full in that moment, that'll be reality. And when they've done studies, they would take a group of people learning new skills, and they would have them, one group would just practice the skills, that's it. Another group would practice the skills and then spend time imagining themselves doing these skills over and over again. And at the end of the day, when it came down to final execution, the group that visualized it were the ones that were much more effective at doing it.
Well, you
So,
think about the athletes and the actors that we know that use visualization. I mean, I know Michael Phelps uses a lot of visualization. There's that story of Jim Carrey really imagining making $1 million and kind of even
yeah,
breaking it, I mean, that stuff is so powerful that I go, why are we not all using this skill that we have a lot all the time?
yeah, you can imagine how powerful we'd be. How much more successful, how many more innovators, how many more people are out there. And I mean, I love that Jim Carrey story where he wrote himself out a check for, $10 million 3 years before he did anything.
Yep, that's
And like, he just looked at that check every day, and eventually it was just he got that offer on Dumb and Dumber, which and then that was a $10 million contract. Whoa! So I think a lot of it has to do with our programming, and if you want to use again hypnosis, we're hypnotized against it to believing that that stuff is possible. So it's like we're programmed to think, okay, well, this sounds all woo woo to me, and therefore I'm not going to do it. And our brain doesn't know, it doesn't compute that. So more and more people are being closed off to it. But the important thing is really, this has to come back. And this is where I think, work with people like us have to really kind of bring that out there a little bit more and just show it, look, this stuff really works. This stuff is not just conjecture. It really works.
Yes. It really, I mean, my own personal experience, it was one of the most transformative things in my life that helped move the needle. And I did all the talk therapy, attachment therapy, I did neurofeedback, EMDR, all of those things I feel like did help. But there was something about the hypnotherapy that, like you said, solutions that moved the needle forward. And you also said something interesting about using tools like ChatGPT and these new AI tools to enhance confidence and to help people walk through the fear that's holding them back. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Sure. Well, the important thing with AI is learning to partner with it, while still owning your own voice, and that's a key there. So with AI, especially with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whichever you want to use, the Grok, I mean, they're all like functioning in the same way. They will help you figure out things, will give you clarity on things. And again, they're not to replace a therapist or anything, or human being, but they are able to kind of help you gain some clarity and gain some confidence in what it is you're doing. Because maybe they'll help you see something in a different way or add another layer or an element to something. And I think a lot of people are scared because they hear the word artificial intelligence. They think Skynet, robots, that it would come down and hurt us all. Or another fear is people feel that AI is going to take over jobs and take over the world. I don't believe that. At least that's not been my expectation of it or view of it. I do, though, think it's an important skill if you want to remain relevant to kind of be able to use, or at least, be able to explain and navigate. Because again, it's not necessarily that AI is going to take over jobs. I think the people who know how to use AI are going to be a much more advantage than those who do not. And it's like back, I come back from a Gen X kind of background where I remember the internet was first coming out, and people were so afraid of that, of the internet. But it was the same principle. If you don't really embrace the information age, you're going to be left behind job wise. And the
So
same thing has falls with AI as well.
absolutely. And how do we use AI when talking about fear specifically, or walking through fear? I thought it was very interesting that you said, it doesn't replace a therapist, but that you could really use it to help. Have you had any experience with inputting certain things into Chat GPT that's given you tools or techniques or theories or whatever that you maybe hadn't even thought of before or heard of?
Oh yeah, because it'll help me with different, just expanding. Like, oh, did you hear about this theory? Well, let me look at it more into this. Let me Google this and look more into it, or read more about it. It gave me suggestions, even books to read, or different people to check out on things. So yeah, it's definitely a good tool, and maybe what we can use, the way I look at it is like maybe not use artificial intelligence, but maybe augmented intelligence instead of, because it's not replacing me, but it's giving me other things to think about.
I really like
So,
that. Yeah, that's a good way to look at that. And is there anything in your life that either recently or something in the future that's a fear of yours that you really want to walk through?
well, I mean, the biggest fear, I think, which I didn't really realize was a fear, was being a first time published author. About putting a book out there. I would love to do that. I was always the person who liked to try new things. Um, I haven't, of course, physically been able to get there, but if I had the chance to look at Tony Robbins' spiral thing, I would be doing it just to kind of like do that, or um, because again, it's just like I like to just stretch the envelope a bit. Like I was a type of person that always participated in class. Sometimes I was they asked for a volunteer to do something, I would do it. Because for me, yeah, I don't think it's like having absence of fear. It's just being able to work through it and go through it. So I think for me, like, starting my own podcast, but going live constantly in social media, which has always been kind of like a reservation of mine. Like, I think from a lot of my early life, I was kind of like behind the scenes type of guy. You know, I'm a talent agent, so I was like, you know, I'm gonna work with actors. I'm not gonna be one. I'm gonna behind the camera. But now, you know, with the past like 5-6 years with social media and influencing that go on, if I, now it's like, well, I can't hide it much longer. So I think that's a daily thing. It's just coming, doing that and going on. But if you told me 10 years ago that I would be a guest on podcasts or that I would be potentially starting one of my own, I would have said no way.
Yay. That's the transformation, the growth, and really stepping into who you are meant to be. So, in front of the camera, behind the camera, all the things. One last question because we have run out of time. I knew this was going to happen, it was going to fly by. And there's no right or wrong answer. But for
Mhm.
you, if there was an exact opposite word of from fear, the word fear, what would that word be for you?
Excitement. Now, and here's why. Because if you look at the bodily sensations of fear, it's butterflies in the stomach, heart rate breathing faster, heartbeat going faster. That's the same exact process with excitement.
So it's the reframe, like, hey, maybe this
Yeah.
isn't fear. Maybe I'm just damn excited about what is
I'm so excited to speak. I'm so excited to get up on stage and speak. I'm not nervous. I'm excited. And this is why, like, a lot of people, really go up and give dynamic, you know, things, even though they might be terrified or nervous, and I use in quotations because that physiological sensations are there. So, and one thing that I kind of learned, one of the biggest lessons I learned from public speaking, to take some classes in public speaking, was there's no way that you're going to eradicate any sensation completely. So there's going to be, even Tony Robbins experiences that tension, but he does it out of momentum and excitement. So that's what we need to push through.
such a good reframe and such an amazing way to end this episode. Albert, thank you so much for coming on
Thank
here
you.
and sharing of yourself and your brilliance and for being in front of the camera.
Thank you
Make
so
it a
much for
good,
inviting.
make it a good day, everybody. Walk through fear, be brave, build that courage muscle. Let's go.